Hi, I'm Julie Miller and I work for the English community organization CASE in the Mauricie and the Centre-Québec. And I'm here in Trois-Rivières on the Rue des Ursulines at corner Sainte-Cécile with my friend
François from Nicolette, but now I live in Trois-Rivières. I've done all my career in Trois-Rivières and I'm glad to be with you because I'm the host of here in the old part of the city that must be discovered by many people, I think.
And you're a historian.
I'm an historian. I try to be because...
You are.
Okay, thank you.
You have a great memory.
Great.
So we're here today because down the street just behind us is the oldest Anglican church in Trois-Rivières, St. James Anglican, which is now being converted into a marionette theater and international residency for marionette artists. But from 1760s, it served the English-speaking population of Trois-Rivières. And why are we standing here on a street corner with a road behind us? Well, we're actually standing on the first English cemetery in Trois-Rivières.
Yes, the second one is nearby. It opened in 1808, but here it was a sort of improvisation because, you know, there's been the British conquest, British occupation of Trois-Rivières. They had to live with what they had around them. Before they settled for real, you know, there's been a couple of decades. And the first cemetery was somewhere around here because we don't know exactly. We have to refer to the very old plans of the city.
Yeah, no, well, there's a historian, Daniel Robert, who's located it here. And when we asked him, well, did they dig up the bones when they made the road? What did they do? He says, we really don't know. It's likely that maybe this cemetery had been abandoned by the time they made a road here and paved it. Maybe somebody took the stones. Maybe they removed a layer of remains, but it's quite likely they didn't dig too deeply. So there are the remains of the first English-speaking Protestant community in Trois-Rivières. Anyway, and that would have included soldiers, a lot of soldiers from the Royal American Regiment, maybe from Fraser's Regiment too, but I think some soldiers from Fraser's Regiment were actually Catholic. Well, I was going through the old registries of St. James Anglican Church and I found the name of the first person buried in the cemetery. So right here underneath us, he was a soldier from the Swiss, well, he wasn't Swiss actually, from the Royal Americans, which had a lot of Swiss in it. He wasn't Swiss. His name was William Brennan. And he was buried here in 1768. And there would have been a lot of interesting people from the early days of the English presence in Trois-Rivières buried here. A seigneuress from Yamachiche could very likely be buried here. And the person that we want to talk about, who was a slightly scandalous person. So he was the first Anglican priest of St. James Anglican here. And he had a really long name, so I'm going to hand that over to you.
He was not even Anglican.
He was, he was. Well, yes, he was. He wasn't born Anglican. He wasn't born Anglican. He was a convert.
He was born in the center of France, which is not a normal land of immigration.
It's so long. It's
Leger-Jean-Baptiste-Noël Veyssière. He was born in the central area of France, around Limoges, which is not a normal land of immigration. Most people were from Normandy or Poitou, and he was from this area. And he came here as a Catholic priest. After that, he turned Récollet, which is a branch of the Franciscan order. And later, he became an Anglican minister.
Yeah, so he converted. So that's the scandal. And he was scandalous for actually two reasons. He was scandalous in the French Catholic community, and he was scandalous in the English Protestant community for different reasons. He covered all the bases.
Damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Poor guy. But maybe he felt he was saved because he'd converted. Who knows? But so he was a scandal for the French Catholic because he had converted. I mean, that was just unheard of. It was a terrible thing, right?
You don't say converted. You say that he...
Oh, yeah.
No, il était un apostat.
Okay.
Convertir is another thing. Convertir can be positive.
He went towards the heretic church.
Apostate, you say?
An apostate, that's
an apostate. He was an apostate. He was not only a converted.
Yeah. No, so he was a fallen. He was a fallen man for the Catholics. But he was controversial in the English-speaking community for a different reason.
Because, first of all, he was known to be a libertin, you know. He had an interest in women.
Oh, he had mistresses and he drank a bit.
And after he turned Anglican, he married twice.
Well, that's what you're allowed to do.
Okay, and then he had another problem because he was not familiar with theology. The Franciscans brothers were people, everyday people, taking care of everyday people, you know, in the Catholic hierarchy. But being an Anglican minister, he should have a knowledge of King James Bible, what he was unable to do, and he must have a gentle, a sweet accent and a sweet discourse.
Okay, so maybe he wasn't as familiar as he could have been with the Bible, perhaps, but that wasn't the real scandal. The real scandal was the fact that he butchered the English language. Nobody could understand a thing he said. That's what I think there were complaints.
I butcher the English language. Just talk to me. I mean,
I can
that's
understand.
not a problem. I mean,
no. I think he butchered it to the point where that no one could understand him. I mean, wasn't there a complaint that was formally written by somebody saying that he didn't understand a single word of his sermon, and it was delivered in English?
Yes, and there's been a complaint. Hey, listen, there's been a complaint, against him too. Let's call it the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel in England. There's been an official complaint at the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel to say, hey, something's wrong in the new colony of Canada because the ministers are mostly him, but still others were butchering the English language and had no knowledge of the Bible.
So you might wonder, why did the Anglican Church choose to have a French priest if they were mostly serving English speakers? Because they would have also been serving French speakers. There were French Huguenots present, and there were also Swiss Protestants and the Royal Americans. So why did they choose this? This was partly thanks to Governor James Murray. Now, he thought that maybe if the Protestants had a French speaker, they could start slowly converting. Just not making too many ripples, but maybe converting some French Catholics.
Me, an Anglican?
So
are you trying to convince me?
Okay, we're going back to 1760s.
Okay.
Is that right? I'm not trying to convince you. But James Murray thought it would be a good policy, and it bombed. I think Veyssière converted 2 people. He converted 2 people.
Probably his
mistresses.
Probably 2 mistresses.
But I think he was a very unusual person for his time, definitely, and obviously a colorful person. But maybe he's been a bit malaligned or maligned in history, because he was a very well-read person. When he died, his library was auctioned off, and Aaron and Ezekiel Hart came, and they were big collectors of books, and apparently he had a lot of books.
He was a neighbor of Aaron Hart.
So he was a neighbor.
Close neighbor and probably a friend, I suppose.
Yeah.
Hart was he was Jewish, but he had to mix with the Anglophone community because he was himself an Anglophone from New York City, and he was representing the British government here. So.
Yeah. So a very, very interesting beginning for the St. James Anglican Church here, which is one of the oldest Anglican churches in Quebec and in Canada. The first priest was...
an apostle.
No, he was a convert. He was an Anglican, Veyssière, and he was buried right under the street somewhere here. It wasn't the street at the time, but he's buried somewhere here in his grave.
He died the same year.
Which I think is sad.
He died the same year as Aaron Hart, his neighbor.
A little known fact.
Okay. I'm here to make you discover something.
I know. I always discover lots of stuff.
That's it.
With you.
1800. That straight 1800. They died.
Veyssière.
Yes.
Leger-Jean-Baptiste-Noël Veyssière, first Anglican priest, St. James Anglican Church, Trois-Rivières. So I'd mentioned that St. James Anglican was a focus of the English-speaking community of Trois-Rivières and of the region. So here we are inside, and as you can see, they're getting ready for renovations to convert it into a marionette theater and a residency for international artists to come and workshop their visual theater pieces. But this is such a beautiful space, and there's a smell to the building, an old smell from the woodwork and from just all the years, the many hundreds of years really that the church has stood here. And the walls are covered with plaques remembering some of the important community leaders. There's Matthew Bell and his wife Anne Mackenzie. The plaque of Chandler from Nicolette was brought and put in the wall here. There's a plaque to Bartholomew Gugy. There's a great many plaques, and not to mention there's 2 plaques on the walls remembering the soldiers who gave their lives during World War I and World War II. And we see the family names, Whitehead, Ritchie, Kendall, Vining, Collins, Baptist, Smith, and many other names who are remembered in the community here and who have descendants living here today. So we just wanted to bring you in to take a look at this beautiful space where Leger-Jean-Baptiste-Noël Veyssière would have preached his unintelligible sermons.